Welcome to a journey that explores the Titanic like you've never seen it before. While many people know the classic tale of the Titanic, with its tragic collision with an iceberg, today we're going to dive deeper into 6 little-known facts about this legendary ship and the mysteries surrounding it. These facts reveal some shocking truths, secrets, and theories that might make you look at the Titanic in a whole new light. So grab a seat and prepare to be amazed by these unheard stories that most people don't know about one of the most famous ships in history. Number 1. The fire that burned. Before the voyage began, before the Titanic even set sail, a disaster was already smoldering. Literally, deep in the ship's belly, a fire had broken out in one of the coal bunkers, and it had been burning for days, possibly even weeks. Before the maiden voyage, coal fires were not unheard of during this era, as coal's flammable nature could cause it to ignite spontaneously when stored in large quantities. But instead of delaying the voyage, the crew decided to manage it in secret, possibly prioritizing the ship's grand debut over safety. Some accounts suggest that one side of the Titanic showed visible signs of fire damage. Burn marks reportedly stained the hull, and to prevent alarm among passengers, this side of the ship was kept turned away from the dock while passengers boarded. Experts now believe this decision weakened the ship's structural integrity, particularly in the area of the hull that later struck the iceberg. The extreme heat from the fire likely made the steel brittle, rendering it more vulnerable to catastrophic damage. 2. The lookout tower. Without binoculars. One of the most baffling decisions made aboard the Titanic was leaving the lookout tower understaffed and without binoculars. You'd think that on the largest and most luxurious ship of its time, there would be no shortage of safety precautions, but this wasn't the case. David Blair, the ship's original second officer, had been reassigned just before the Titanic's maiden voyage. In his rush to leave, he accidentally took the keys to the locker containing the binoculars. Without them, the lookout crew had to rely on their naked eyes to scan the freezing Atlantic. On that fateful night, by the time the iceberg was spotted, it was too late. Had the crew been properly equipped, they might have seen the iceberg earlier, given the ship time to change course and prevented the disaster altogether. Only very few remembers this scene.
Did you ever find those binoculars for the lookout?
Haven't seen them since Southampton. Well, I'll be on my rounds. Cheerio.
3. A deliberate sinking to kill opponents of the Federal Reserve. This theory takes the conspiracy even further. Some believe the Titanic's sinking wasn't an accident at all, but a deliberate act orchestrated by J.P. Morgan, one of the most powerful financiers of the era. Several wealthy and influential men who allegedly opposed the creation of a U.S. central bank were aboard the Titanic, including John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. All 3 perished in the disaster. Adding fuel to the theory, J.P. Morgan himself had a ticket for the Titanic's maiden voyage, but canceled at the last minute, citing illness. Coincidence? While this theory wasn't investigated further, or maybe stopped, it's one of the most debated aspects of the Titanic story. 4. Lifeboats removed for aesthetic reasons. Here's a question. If you're designing a ship hailed as unsinkable, how many lifeboats would you add? Enough for everyone on board, right? But that's not what happened with the Titanic. Originally, the ship's designers planned for 48 lifeboats, which could have saved over 3,000 people. But when the ship's owners, the White Star Line, saw how the lifeboats cluttered the deck, they decided to remove more than half of them. Why? To make the Titanic look more elegant and luxurious. They believed the lifeboats ruined the ship's grandeur and wouldn't be needed anyway, because the Titanic was unsinkable. In the end, only 20 lifeboats remained. 5. No one really knows how many people died. The official death toll varies between 1,490 and 1,635. Here's why. The Titanic's passenger list was a chaotic mess. Many passengers used fake names, especially those traveling to escape difficult situations or start new lives in America. Some never officially boarded, but were still counted among the victims, made it nearly impossible to keep accurate records. Even today, more than 100 victims remain unidentified, their graves marked only by numbers. In 2008, nearly a century after the disaster, DNA testing finally identified one of the unknown victims, a 19-month-old boy named Sidney Leslie Goodwin. This haunting uncertainty adds another layer to the Titanic's tragic legacy. 6. The insurance scam and switched ships conspiracy. Here's where things take a turn into the world of conspiracies. Some theorists believe the Titanic wasn't the Titanic at all. They argue that the White Star Line switched the Titanic with its nearly identical sister ship, the Olympic, as part of an elaborate insurance scam. Witnesses claimed certain structural differences between the Titanic and the Olympic were visible even after the supposed switch. Others point out inconsistencies in how quickly the ship sank after hitting the iceberg, suggesting pre-existing damage. It's a wild idea, but the very fact that such a theory exists adds to the Titanic's enduring mystery. The Titanic's story is more than a tale of an iceberg and a sinking ship. It's a web of decisions, oversights, and mysteries that continue to fascinate us more than a century later. Titanic will always be more than just a ship. It's a story that will live on, captivating generation after generation. Please follow the channel for more interesting stories.